Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience today as we get started on our webinar. This is budget-based water rates, opportunities, and pitfalls, and we have a great lineup of speakers today. And for those of you who aren't too familiar with the CADC, I wanted to just give a little background on who we are. Then I'll introduce our speakers, we'll have our presentations, and we'll follow up with a couple of announcements. Feel free to use the chat. You also have Q&A function. So please ask as many questions through chat at the end. If you would like to raise your hand or put something in the Q&A, we'll make sure and try to get to everybody. We are recording this. This will be available on our YouTube channel as soon as it's made available. So a little bit about the CADC and what we do. We are a nonprofit. We're staffed by data scientists. But we're really governed by a group of water agencies across California that really want to use data to help better manage their water resources and drive resiliency and sustainability. So we have 23 members and we're growing, and we hope that you will join us on this journey. But really, these are some of the services that we offer. We do a lot of different things, and one of them is collaboration, and that's why we're here today, is to collaborate to find best ideas so that we can implement them within our own agencies and share them, amongst others. But we also collaborate with folks outside of the water industry, whether that's nonprofits, academics, tech companies. We also have two different software systems that we develop specifically for water agencies. So we have one that's really for retailers and their customer data, as well as helping them unlock their AMI data so that they can run queries and reports to really tackle those questions that they need to get answered. We also have, see one of our panelists join, yay. Hey, Adam. We also do some consulting on a case-by-case basis, but one of the benefits to our members are what we call our insight projects. So they really tap us as an extension of their staff, where they can use our data scientists to help them with analytics projects that they need help with. Maybe it's a back burner issue, or it's something that they just don't have the expertise in-house. They can, as a member, tap into our resources and education. And that's really why we're here today, to help provide best-in-class programming. Today we have a fantastic lineup. We've got folks from different water retailers across California who've been implementing some level of water budget-based rates for many years. And so they've got a wealth of information. And I really hope that you get a lot out of what they're going to say. Ask them questions at the end, please. We want to make sure that we're getting the right information to you so you can adopt these practices in your own agencies. Let me just do a quick check. See if my other panelists came in. Yes. Okay. So today we have Adam McWey. He is the conservation manager for Coachella Valley Water District, where he leads the water management sections. He works with the public to encourage water conservation by identifying opportunities and developing programs that support the district's long-term water conservation efforts. Also from Coachella Valley Water District is Lisa Francis. She's an 18-year veteran of the district, and for the last 10 years, her focus has really been on water budget analysis and accuracy with an emphasis on customer outreach. She also works closely with homeowner associations and community managers to ensure a clear understanding of the budget-based tiered rates and the budget review process. And we also have Jenna Shimmin. She has 20 years of experience in the water industry and is the Director of Water Use Efficiency at Eastern Municipal Water District. She serves on several AWWA committees and just lost my page. And she's also the chair of our committee. We also have, I'm just having all kinds of technical difficulties today. Sorry, folks. We also have Dan Carney. He's also with Eastern Municipal Water District. Dan has designed and implemented public water conservation programs in California for the past 26 years, emphasizing a customer-friendly approach with the goal of encouraging lifelong conservation practices. Dan is a graduate of the School of Environmental Design at Cal Poly Pomona and a professional landscape architect. We also have Craig Jones. He's the Resource Conservation Manager for Las Virgenes Municipal Water District, overseeing conservation programs and water resource management. He's got 25 years of water and conservation and wastewater utility experience, and has fulfilled roles of public information officer, manager of conservation programs, education outreach, legislative affairs, and grant management. And then we have Ursula Bosson, who began her water career in 2006. She worked for the city of Santa Barbara before joining Las Virgenes Municipal Water District in 2019. Ursula holds a BS in Business Administration and an MS in Strategic Communications. Ursula loves her role as customer service manager for the district, as it allows her to meet and speak with people who live in the district's service area. So with that, let me just see if Lisa's able to pop in. Not yet. Okay. So I'm going to stop my screen share for a second and then scroll down to your slides, Craig and Ursula.
I think we have everyone here now.
Not yet.
Oh.
I think Lisa's still.
No, Lisa's here. I have promoted her.
Oh, she is.
Panelist.
Oh, you did. Okay. Oh, okay, great. Then there you are. Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Hi. So if you guys are ready, then we'll go ahead and get you guys going.
Yeah, we're ready.
Okay.
Ready.
Yay. Okay. Just let me know when you're ready to go to the next slide.
Okay, so yeah, hello, my name's Adam McWey, Conservation Manager at Coachella Valley Water District. I'm going to be joined by Lisa Francis, who's one of our lead water management specialists. So I'm glad that we're able to kick this off. And since we don't have a lot of time, I'm going to try to move pretty quick. So we hopefully still have some time for questions at the end. Let's see, so go ahead and give me a click. A couple clicks. So just to start, a little bit about the Coachella Valley. So we're located mostly within Riverside County. Does include some small portions of San Diego, Imperial counties as well. We are part of the Colorado desert. So we experience minimal rainfall, only about 2 to 4 inches a year. That lends us to extreme summer temperatures. We'll see multiple consecutive days of 100+ degrees Fahrenheit. And so, yeah, desert, frequent drought conditions here in the Coachella Valley, and kind of just overall overview of the economy here. So despite those summer conditions, and in part because of how nice the conditions are in those non-summer months, it's really a destination area for residents and tourists. So golf and recreation are huge economic drivers here. There's over 120 golf courses within the Coachella Valley. We also have the festivals. So just survived second weekend of Coachella, have Stagecoach coming up. There's other large events. Ironman has been hosted out here, Indian Wells tennis tournament and things like that. But in addition to kind of those recreational activities, we also have a very large agricultural industry here in the Valley that produces nearly 600 million in agricultural products annually. So next slide. So more specific just to Coachella Valley Water District. So here we have 7 fields of service. So domestic water, whereby we utilize budget-based rates. We also have agricultural, irrigation, wastewater treatment, recycled water, groundwater replenishment, stormwater protection, and water conservation. So I'm going to need a few clicks on just kind of highlights of the water district. So our service area does comprise of just about 1,000 square miles. We have just over 113,000 domestic connections, whereby there's more than 400 HOAs that utilize domestic connections. Just within CVWD service area, there are over 100 golf courses. None of those utilize domestic water, but they are our customers through those other services we provide. And then I think just one more click just to kind of note, we do not have AMI or AMI data. within our system. So next slide is just kind of a overview, I guess, of budget-based rates at CVWD. So I think they were initially identified as a need or as a proposed project back in the 2005 Urban Water Management Plan, which was followed in 2008 by a tiered rate study. And really blows my mind there. I was not here back then, but they implemented those tiered rates in just a 4-month time frame. So the study was completed in 2008. They were adopted January of 2009, followed by a few months of shadow billing and implemented in May of 2009. So just a note, and Lisa will kind of discuss it more, but to accomplish that real quick implementation, assumptions obviously had to be made regarding some of the budget elements. And so we're still encountering kind of those assumptions today, 15 years later, right? Some long-term implications, I guess, of budget-based rates. So I think a lot of that is kind of grounded in data maintenance. So the whole concept, I guess, of an individualized budget, you're going to have individualized data. So landscape area per parcel, say. So there's going to be a lot of maintenance requirements and development requirements for figuring out that individualized data. On top of that, there's going to be kind of data maintenance surrounding the budget components that you utilize to develop your water budget formula. So such as landscape area, irrigation efficiency that you utilize, plant factors, evapotranspiration, ETO. I mean, I'll talk more on the next slide, kind of what our components are, but all those are going to have kind of varying degrees of data maintenance as well. Also, you're going to need to think about variances, and so those might be specific kind of to your service area. So just in addition to what variances you may need to provide, you also kind of need to think of how your billing system might be able to handle those and how the ways that it might be able to incorporate those. So just an example, something specific to our area, we do provide like a variance for livestock. And then another thing to kind of just think about is how budget-based rates, I guess, might impact other services you provide. And for us, I kind of think of that with our sewer service. So it's not directly related, but for commercial sewer charges, those are based on a 3-year average of consumption, of domestic consumption. So we run into problems where we find a dedicated irrigation meter. It's been hooked up to provide domestic water to, say, like a standalone restroom on a golf course or within a large HOA. And it creates a lot of headaches just for us and the customer to figure out how they're going to separate those lines to keep the water budget for the dedicated irrigation meter accurate, and also the kind of sewer charges reasonable on the sewer side. And then lastly, I guess, just thinking about budget-based rates and success and how you measure or evaluate if our budget-based rates have been successful. So I wanted to kind of talk about maybe a few ways to think about that. So obviously first, just driving conservation. So with respect to the 20 by 2020 goal of SPX 7, we exceeded that and reduced our gallons per capita per day, or GPCD, by 36% by 2020. So we exceeded that goal. And I think budget-based rates probably played a big part in achieving that. Also, so the tiered rates have created an internal funding mechanism for us to fund our conservation programs. And through those, since 2009, we've converted nearly 26 million square feet of turf. So budget-based rates have played a big part in that. As I mentioned, we don't have AMI, but we're able to use some of the data from the budget-based rates to help us in targeted outreach. So finding customers not just with high consumption, but customers that are routinely exceeding their budget by large amounts. We can target those customers for conservation review or field visits to kind of walk through the property and maybe help them identify some issues that might exist out there. Or like say last year, we implemented the direct distribution program in partnership with CalWEP of the flumes and brachios, and we kind of rolled those out to start by targeting those high water users to start when we first rolled it out those first few months. And then lastly, it's kind of helped us in some aspects of revenue assurance. So having that data where we can compare consumption versus meter size or landscape area, we can use that sometimes to help us identify maybe failing meters. It also helps us with finding inaccurate budgets. So it's just kind of a broad overview, I guess, of budgets here. And then next slide is just going to kind of go over the nuts and bolts of the water budget. So this is the water budget here at CVWD. So it's comprised of two components, the indoor component, the outdoor. So we have there on the indoor side, residential mixed use meters, and at the bottom, dedicated irrigation meters. So for residential, their indoor budget component is, we assume 4 occupants per home, 50 gallons per person per day. And that equates to approximately 8 CCF, which is our billing unit, per month or per 30 days. And so that's the indoor component. We provide an indoor component to those mixed use meters that's based kind of on the anticipated sewer demand. And then for those dedicated irrigation meters, they don't receive any indoor budget. So their budget is going to be just comprised of that outdoor component. And there is our outdoor component, and the formula that we utilize, so pretty easy. So we've got to start the landscape area, and we multiply that by ETO, the evapotranspiration, kind of defined there at the bottom. We just generally think of that as the amount of water that has to be replaced for the plant to stay alive and grow. That next item there, the weather zone factor, the microclimate factor. So within our district, we found that there's kind of 4 microclimates or weather zones. So we get our ETO data from a CIMA station located in one of those weather zones. And then that factor is used to adjust the ETO to those other microclimates. So say another area, the ETO needs maybe 80% of where this CIMA station. So we have 4 microclimates, and that's kind of how we account for those in our formula. So that's the first part. And second, so we have monthly plant factor. So our plant factor actually adjusts throughout the course of the year. It changes a little bit throughout the year based on whether it's season for warm or cool season turf. We also incorporate kind of into the monthly plant factor an assumption that that landscape area is 50% turf and 50% low water use. And so that monthly plant factor is laid out kind of in our rules and regulations. That's multiplied by a volumetric conversion factor to convert it to our billing unit, CCF, and then that's been divided by irrigation efficiency. So we assume an irrigation efficiency of 70%. So, and then I also have there, just kind of for your reference, the tiers that we utilize. So in our billing structure, we have 5 tiers. So as I mentioned, that tier 1, that 8 CCF is only available for residential. For other customers, mixed use meter and dedicated irrigation meters, their billing starts at that tier 2. And then we go into tier 3, 4, and 5, depending on, as you can see, how over budget the consumption is. So, and then just a quick note, I kind of listed some of the variances we provide for. So we do have a variance if there are more than 4 occupants in a home, also for medical reasons, as I mentioned, livestock, And then even for dedicated irrigation meters, if there's large landscape areas that are required to be 100% turf for slope protection purposes, we'll provide a variance for that, or unique soil types. So that's kind of it for me. So I'll hand it off to Lisa, who's kind of going to go into some more details on how we review budgets, kind of discuss some of those pitfalls and opportunities. So thanks.
Hi, everyone. So can you hear me okay?
Yep, thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today and allowing us to tell you what we've learned about budget-based tiered rates. We're so glad to be here to share this with you. And just to kind of pick up where Adam left off, our budgets are scientifically calculated, so they're pretty much tailored to each customer. But water budgets, and this is the most important point we want to emphasize to you, they're only fair, equitable, and effective if the information they're based on is accurate. And due to our very short timeline, which Adam explained on his second slide, there was more than 100,000 customers to be implemented into this new kind of billing. We find now, and we have found over the last 15 years, all kinds of inaccuracies. And if you want to click through this, Kim, we can see what kind of reasons we might have for having an inaccuracy. One example is landscape area attributed to the meter is too big or too small. The customer might be using the meter for something other than what it was designated for. And because we do have sewer as part of our service, if a dedicated irrigation meter is used to service a restroom at a community pool, that will impact the customer's budget. And HOAs, of course, because we have so many in our service area and the residents living within them, sometimes there's some overlap between landscape area accredited to the HOA and landscape area accredited to the residents. So initially with implementation, our residential customers were given a 45% of their lot size assumption. Now in an HOA, that may or may not work. Sometimes HOAs, as you know, irrigate front or side or backyards, or an HOA might include large segments of condos, which have little or no landscaping at all. So in those scenarios, the 45% assumption is really inaccurate. We can go to the next slide, please. So what if the budget is wrong? Well, we do have a budget review procedure that we utilize. Any customer within CVWD can request a budget review. Residential customers, for example, might want to request additional occupants in their home more than the default of 4 that Adam mentioned. A commercial customer may appeal for additional area or feel like we're shorting them somehow. So those are typical reasons why we would do a budget review at their request. Most of the budget reviews we do, however, are internally generated, and this goes back to the inaccurate information we obtained at the time of implementation. So inaccuracies, as I said, are typically seen in HOAs and the residential homes within them. So those a lot of times are the accounts that we will look at first. And this kind of shows you the process. We require staffing to identify those potential issues. We do conduct on-site meter surveys, analyze the findings, map or remap, whatever the case may be. We make the changes and notify the customer of a budget change. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Even with a high degree of budget accuracy, though, it's important to remember that situations change. So we have found that periodic budget reviews are also necessary for just budget maintenance. And at CVWD, our goal is to review our DIM customers every 5 years. We're not quite there yet because we haven't cycled through all of the inaccuracies, but that will be something that we're shooting for. Next slide, please. So because of the large number of HOAs in our service area, we have a lot of large landscape customers with multiple meters. And with implementation, these meters were grouped together and budgeted with an aggregate amount of landscape area served by all the meters. But over time, we've come to realize that aggregate billing for meters that are not hydraulically connected is less likely to incentivize leak repairs and other water saving measures. So our policy is that aggregate budgets are only available to customers whose meters are hydraulically looped with one another. In this illustration here, you see the red area, for example, that's going to represent multiple meters that are all hydraulically connected with one another. So the red area is going to get an aggregate budget based on that total amount of landscape area. Same for the blue, same for the green and the yellow, and so on. And now, how do we know if meters are looped? Well, it's boots on the ground. Confirmation requires that we go out there, turn things on and off, and hopefully with the help of landscape maintenance on site. And when our meter surveys reveal that meters are not hydraulically looped, but they're getting an aggregate budget, we change that billing. And those standalone meters are going to be billed and budgeted individually based on the amount of landscape area they alone serve. Next slide, please. So we've kind of narrowed it down to two major pitfalls as far as budget-based rates are concerned. The first one is that 15 years in, we're still finding inaccurate budgets. But I would like to make sure you know, more often than not, customers have been over budgeted and not the other way around. So that goes back to the same thing we've been talking about, where we weren't getting accurate information. We over assumed on that 45% of lot area, for example. Condos don't have landscaping or have very little, so they don't really need an outdoor budget, or HOAs irrigate a front yard for their residences, and therefore that budget should go to the HOA, not to the homeowner. So next slide, please. And the second pitfall, tiered rates are confusing enough for non-water industry civilians. So advising customers that their budget has changed to something that very different from what they're used to, it's very confusing for the customer. It's time consuming and therefore costly for the district. So at this point, we only notify customers when the change will be impactful. That does require some historical consumption analysis, but we do allow for that staffing. Next slide, please. So the opportunities that we want to impart to you, all listed here, even with those pitfalls that we've talked about. For CVWD, budget-based tiered rates are the most effective conservation tool. And the reason we think is because they are the most far-reaching. All of our domestic customers have a definitive water budget. And as Adam mentioned to you, budget-based rates are not our only conservation tool. We've had, for example, a landscape ordinance in place that governs new and rehabilitated landscapes since 2007, but not all landscapes are new or rehabilitated. We consistently offer new innovative programming and incentives to reduce water use, but not all customers have turf to convert or have spray heads that need upgrading or need controllers optimized for weather conditions. Budget-based tiered rates are the way to reach everyone and get everyone to conserve. And with our budget-based rates at the forefront, CVWD's long-term conservation efforts have seen 36% reduction in gallons per capita daily consumption. And for the last slide, in closing, again, budget accuracy is everything. For your budget-based rates to be truly effective, you want to plan accordingly. The first thing I would say is consider the number of customers you serve, along with other factors that are unique to your area, so that you can determine how much time is needed for planning and implementation. Secondly, for a greater degree of accuracy, seek the most current imagery available that you can. Plan for boots on the ground meter surveys so you can confirm if meters are used as designated, so you can confirm the amount of landscape they're serving, so that you can confirm whether meters are hydraulically looped. And finally, maintenance is required. So a budget review is not a one and done proposition. It's going to be something you want to do every so often, periodically, and you want to plan for adequate staffing to conduct those reviews and do the updates. And thank you, Kim, so much, and California Data Collaborative for the invitation to speak to you today.
Thanks, Lisa and Adam. Really appreciate it. And Lisa was telling us that this is a picture of their headquarters and their newly established sustainable landscaping, which is beautiful. So hopefully you'll get a chance to go check it out in person. Adam and Lisa, you've got some great questions in the chat, so please take a look at those, and we will get to those at the end of the presentation. So next, I want to bring on board folks from Eastern. So Jenna, I think you're up next.
Yeah, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jenna Shimmin, Director of Water Use Efficiency at Eastern Municipal Water District. I have also with me Dan Carney, who's a Principal Water Resources Specialist within our Conservation Department. And so if you want to go to the next slide, please. Similar to Adam, I'll more quickly go through our district overview since we're a little crunched on time. Next year, we'll be celebrating our 75th anniversary, so be on the lookout for some fun things around that. But we serve nearly 1 million people, over 601 square miles. We're currently only about 43% built out. We offer both retail and wholesale water supplies. We serve water, wastewater, and recycled water. And we're one of Metropolitan's member agencies. Next slide, please. Just to orient you to where we're located, we're in Riverside County and are the 6th largest water agency in the state of California. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, we offer drinking water, wastewater, and recycled water services. You can see the number of connections across all three there, how many acre feet that we have sold in the last fiscal year. And we do import water both from State Water Project and the Colorado River Aqueduct, as well as having groundwater wells and desalination plants. Next slide, please. And this is one very unique thing about Eastern is that we have a very diverse supply portfolio. It's very forward-thinking, trying to be as locally reliable as possible. And as mentioned, we do have some desalination within our area. We import raw and treated water. And then we have some brackish groundwater wells within our service area. Next slide, please. And just kind of put that in a percent perspective, this is what our portfolio looks like as far as our recycled water versus groundwater, desal, and then our imported water. Next slide, please. And then I will hand it over to Dan to go into the historical view of how we implemented budget-based rates at Eastern.
Jenna, thank you so much. And Kim, thank you for having us. And hello to everybody out there in Zoom land. So my job today is to give a little bit of background and some details about our water budgets here at EMWD. You'll hear a lot of similarities. You'll see a lot of similarities between us and Coachella Valley, and I couldn't agree more with Lisa's analysis. So at EMWD, we also started about 15 years ago implementing these allocation-based rates. And we started with residential, single-family residential accounts. These are all potable, of course. And initially, since they're about 80% of our customers, we assigned 3,000 square feet of landscape to every single customer, and then set up a variance process where the customer would then send in a variance form to update the landscape. After 15 years, we've gotten very few of those variance forms. Part of the reason we think is that most people have, in fact, we know most people have more landscape area assigned to their properties than less. So they're not inclined to contact us because they get a break on their water rates. So after the residential, several years later, we extended the budgets to irrigation only, large landscape customers. And then finally, most recently, in 2018, to non-residential, the whole mix of different kinds of commercial properties that we have. We utilized every possible resource we could to get this data. We had interns come in and do heads-up digitizing on ArcGIS. We have our, several different billing databases that we try to integrate with, going out on field surveys, utilizing drawings that people sent in or that we sent to folks, photographs, everything we could possibly do. One of the things I want to go to right away is at the bottom of the slide here, the landscape irrigation calculation. And this is really the heart of the budgets because, of course, the indoor portion is fairly easy. You know, we have 55 gallons per person per day, but the landscape part, and I'm going to focus on the LA, the landscape area, in just a minute, because that's by far the most significant cause of errors or accuracy, however you want to put it. But at EMWD, our billing units, which are, for those who are not in the water industry, about 748 gallons or 100 cubic feet, are what you're charged for in terms of the variable rate, variable portion of your bill. We also have a lot of fixed charges, of course. And that's made up of the evapotranspiration. Adam talked about that. And here at EMWD, we use reference evapotranspiration, ETO, from CIMAS, Spatial CIMAS. And CIMAS is California Irrigation Management Information System, for those of you who aren't anointed. And that works pretty well. There are a number of other sources as well. You could obtain ET data. OpenET has come out recently, which is a NASA project. It's pretty amazing using satellites. There's also the Personal Weather Station Network. And also, of course, you can use on-site sensors to get that ET data. The CF in our formula is conservation factor, and that for most people would be called the plant factor. We call it conservation factor because it's for the entire site. It's not divided into plant types. And it's based on really the age of construction of the home. So we have conservation factors ranging from 0.5, which is the most restrictive, half of whatever the reference evaporation is, up to 1, for areas that require a full complement of water. The DF is drought factor. Currently, that's not in play. It's basically 1. And then the conversion factor. So again, just to highlight, the most important element there is the landscape area. How do you get it? How do you update it? And what impact does it have on your customers? Let's see. So the take-home message I'd like to leave for sure is that this system is a work in progress. Since the beginning and to this day, we're working to make it better. It's very complicated. There are a lot of challenges, and it's very expensive to do it well, meaning accurately. Next slide, please. All right, so for our residential customers, the sort of the strategic goals of all of these allocation-based rate structures is that they will be, not one size fits all. It's tailored to your particular property. And if those pricing signals are accurate, meaning, if you're really in budget and you're getting the lowest cost of water, great. And then if you sort of lose track there and start using too much more, you're going to get a financial reminder to get back in. The fair uses premise obviously relies again on the accuracy of that. It can be very unfair if you don't have an accurate water budget. So you can see our tiers, our tier rate structure here for residential. That's for most of our customers. We have quite a number of different variations on the pricing structures here, depending on various communities in our district. But basically, you can see that approximately doubles for each tier. So you really don't want to be jumping up outside of your budgeted tier. And you can see at the bottom there, that little diagram shows tier 1, our indoor water use, 55 gallons per person per day. We assume 3 people, unless we get a variance. And then tier 2 plus tier 1 makes up the total water budget. So if you have a really accurate water budget, your landscape's going to be in great shape, and you're going to basically be paying as little as you can. If you go 1 billing unit over, you're going up to $6, $7 or more in terms of the cost per unit, which is not fun. Next slide, please. And for sewer block factors, we have a similar concept here, based on consumption, obviously, as well as persons per household. And the basic idea is that you pay to play. If you have more people, you're using more, disposing of more water down the sewer, you're going to pay more. But obviously, encouraging efficient use is the way to keep your prices down there. Next slide, please. And for non-residential, we have 3 tiers, similar pricing. Tier 1 is your total water budget, and this would be for all your irrigation only and other non-single family residential properties. Next slide, please. And this is our most recent group of accounts that we sort of try to get our hands around in 2018. There's a lot of variation in all of these different sites, as you can imagine. It's difficult to come up with factors, indoor budget factors, and outdoors fairly easy in this sense. But that's why I think it was left to the end here or later in the process, because it is very challenging, but very similar process. Next slide, please. So then the question is, how do you communicate the budget once you've put it all together? The top on-bill presentation there, I think, is the latest evolution of how we communicate, and it's pretty intuitive, right? The green is your budget, or excuse me, is your usage, and the blue is your goal. So if you can stay under that, you're doing really well. Now at the bottom there, the customized spreadsheets and field maps, we've needed to use those mostly for large landscape sites that have multiple meters. Some of them are loop meters. The field maps we use, we just create customized Excel spreadsheets and send them to them. Some people want them, monthly. Some people want them weekly. But the field maps, we've tried a variety of different methods. I saw one comment was, set the water budget to 0. Well, we've tried that and it didn't work for a lot of our large customers for a number of reasons, basically because when you're dealing with the CII customers, the non-residential customers, the people who pay the bills may be in a different state or county than the people who are the landscapers, and they don't always talk to themselves. So what we found worked out really well is to generate a map of the site on GIS and set up an appointment to talk to the landscapers and send them that map and let them, because they have a lot of the local knowledge, let them color code it so we can see which areas serve which meters, and that's worked out fairly well. Thank you. Next slide. And then finally for me, the collection of site data is absolutely monstrous, and it doesn't just relate to the conservation staff, right? There are multiple departments involved in this budget process: billing, IT, our GIS group, our conservation group. A lot of hands working on this. It's expensive and it's complex. We do have all of our customers have AMI meters right now, which adds to the complexity, and I'm just chomping at the bit to be able to have a system where we can actually access all that AMI data kind of seamlessly with the conservation budgets. Again, this is for future development. What worked really well so far for us is all of our new developments. Our area is very rapidly developing with new homes, single family homes in particular, and we do have an internal plan review process here where we are able to get the landscape area measurements, at least at construction time, accurately off of the construction documents, the site plans from the architects. So that works out really well. One thing some of you may want to think about with your agency, if you want to get started with something like this, is consider just starting with one group, and I would recommend the smallest group. For us, it's the irrigation only sites, and really hone that down and get the accuracy, set up a system for renewing it and so forth, and then maybe expand to your other customer groups as well. Obviously, accuracy is the key. One thing I want to say about multispectral aerial photography, that's the system we're working on right now. We're working with local groups here and USBR, and using 3-inch pixel 4-band, red, green, blue, and near infrared imagery that was very carefully sourced and so forth. And our hope is we haven't achieved it yet. Our hope is to be able to use this imagery, obviously tie all of the parcels to the image, the infrared image, which, that's where the vegetation pops out, so you can really measure it accurately. And then have a process where we could, let's say every 5 years, have a refresh on all the data, where we could refly the area and sort of, update it almost automatically. Whether or not that will happen, I don't know, but we think that will be one way with, with our staff and so forth that we have and reasonable budget, that we could in fact set up a long-term, fair system that would accurately measure everybody's landscape, or inaccurately measure it in the same way within the same parameters. So that's what we have, and I'll send it back over to Jenna. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. If you want to click one more, please, Kim. Thank you. So I'll talk a little bit about how our budget-based rates have helped us. So we've tracked our progress since 2000. Obviously, the rates didn't go into effect until 2009, 2010. But over the course of the last quarter century, our population has exploded. However, our customers have done a great job of keeping the per capita or per person water use down. We've also introduced some new water supplies, so desalination has come into play, and also we've upped our use of recycled water throughout our service area. Next slide, please. And you can just see here how our per capita or per person use has gone down over the years. And you can really see a big, oh, they kind of crunched up how it's on here, sorry. But you can kind of see where two numbers that you can kind of see there after the 2005 is 2009. And you can see on the line how once we implemented those, it really dropped down a lot. It's continued to, this is thanks in part to our customers responding to their budget-based rates and keeping in line with those, and also just participating in our various rebate and programs, which have changed throughout the years. You can also see a little bit with the line that it's affected a bit by the drought cycle. After a drought is over, water use goes back up a bit. When a drought's in place, it drops down significantly, which I'm sure most agencies are seeing also. Next slide, please. Some changes over time. I think a really big component of success with the budget-based tiered rates is leak detection. So if customers have a budget they're trying to stay within, they're going to pay more attention if the water use goes up, as opposed to if it's a flat rate, they may not be affected as greatly. So it really does promote them to get those fixed more quickly, especially now that we have AMI meter infrastructure. This helps customers to go in if they make an account in what we call My Account. They have access to their usage. They can also set up leak alerts. So it really does help them, again, keep on top of a leak much more quickly. And also, again, with the budget-based rate there, they're more prone to want to fix it quickly. Also, when drought restrictions are in place, we can, as Dan mentioned, there's that DF drought factor that can be put into place in alignment with what our water shortage contingency plan says based on the stage that we're in. And also, another great component with the budget-based tiered rates is if there's policy changes, we can just adjust them accordingly. As you heard, the conservation factor, or the ET factor, excuse me, is based on the year that the property was built or the landscape was installed. So that can go in if we change that policy. And then we can change that factor. Also, as we look to the future here, we've got the urban water use objective coming out. There's an indoor component that's changing with some legislation, so we can adjust that accordingly. As the outdoor part changes with the urban water use objective, we can adjust that accordingly. We also have a permanent ban on the irrigation of non-functional turf here at Eastern. Initially, it was temporary in alignment with the state, with the governor's drought declaration. Then we adopted as part of our administrative code. So that is permanently in place, and we utilize that within our budget calculation to help customers, to target the customers that had non-functional turf, to, make sure that they're getting the water for the functional landscape areas, but are, being given that signal there that, hey, you shouldn't be irrigating these non-functional areas. Next slide, please. And just again to drive home, very similar to how Lisa ended her presentation, some lessons learned through this process. You'll want to give yourself plenty of time. Make sure you develop a good plan for all the components that you'll need. And those components, that resources you need, aren't just software or hardware. Don't forget about that human factor in there. This spans various departments. You want to get them on board. You want to make sure that they have adequate staffing and time to take this on. You also want to be able to couple it with other tools and resources, because budgets alone, as Dan mentioned, sometimes the person paying the bill is in another state or another region, and they're just not taking that price point. So if we can also then say, hey, we have these other programs, these other tools for you, that can help them to get back within budget. Be flexible and adaptable. Things are going to change by the minute sometimes, but definitely, you know, by the month and by the year. So just be flexible and adaptable through the process. You know, make sure you're tracking how you're doing things. You know, that helps both you to see what you did with one customer and transfer to another, but also historically, you're going to look back and say, why'd we do that? And you'll want to have an answer for that. Another thing that Dan mentioned is, you know, consider alternatives that best fit your agency. Perhaps, you know, the initial rollout doesn't have to be all of your customer classes. It can just be the ones that you think this will benefit the most, or what, you know, time frame you have to roll it out can affect who you roll it out to. The list of not to-dos, you know, make sure, as we've said, there's a lot of maintenance around this. So you have to keep up with it. You have to figure out a plan of how to keep up with that. We've changed our billing software, you know, a couple of years ago, and there are some limitations within that we did not expect. So make sure that you're talking to whoever your billing software company is and asking, can it do these things we really need it to do or we want it to do? And just know going in what your limitations are. And again, just, you know, keep track of how you're doing it. And that will also help with, you know, seeing why things maybe are inaccurate, because accuracy, accuracy, accuracy. We cannot drive that home enough. And that is it for us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenna and Dan. So next up, we've got our folks from Las Virgenes. So Craig, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thank you, Kim.
I can hear you fine.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Perfect. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for hanging in with us. I hope everybody's having a great Thursday, and I hope you enjoyed our elevator music while we were figuring out our technical difficulties. So yes, I am Craig Jones with Las Virgenes Municipal Water District, the Resource Conservation Manager. Ursula Bosson, our Customer Service Manager, will be co-presenting with me today. Next slide. So just a little background about Las Virgenes. We have been a kind of an innovative leader since our inception in 1958. These are just a couple of visuals for you to see. Our sustainability garden that is located right outside of our pure water demonstration facility. And then this picture on the upper right here is our composting facility. So we early on were adopters of, you know, our biosludge, a composting facility. So we actually provide that free of charge for our customers. And again, so instead of land hauling, land application for our sludge, for our wastewater treatment plant. And then we have a 5 megawatt solar field. And then the bottom right, this is a oldie but a goodie shot of our Westlake Reservoir that was built. This is actually, if you see the date stamp over here, it's August of 75. So take a moment to think about what you were doing in 1975. But again, it was built as a 6-month emergency supply to be kind of a demand offset. And, you know, again, for us, as I'll go into a little more detail, you know, we are a state water project dependent area. So unlike Eastern and others, we don't have a diverse water supply portfolio. Next slide, please. So again, we are a MET member agency. We're located right at the top of Los Angeles County, butting up against the Ventura County border. We're about 122 square mile service area. Again, we are one of the state water project dependent areas. Virtually the vast majority of our supply comes from the state water project, as mentioned. We're about 22,000 service connections. As was mentioned by Coachella, like them, we do have a large amount of HOAs and large expansive estates and properties. And we did complete full deployment of AMI at the end of 2022. But again, as the service area map reflects, we are full service wastewater, potable. We have had a large recycled water system since 1964 for demand offset. But again, one of our greatest challenges is we just have no diversification of water supply. Next slide. So with that, I'm just setting the stage that water budgets come into play for us in the backdrop of our kind of our water supply portfolio. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ursula Bosson.
Hi, thank you. So I'm Ursula Bosson, the Customer Service Manager for Las Virgenes Municipal Water District. Today, I'm going to go into detail about our water budgets, our tiers, billing, and adjustments. So as you can see on this slide, on our water budget overview, we have our indoor need, our outdoor need, and then we do adjustments, and then finally we'll cover the billing. Next slide, please. So LVMWD for short bills customers by using a unique water budget formula that creates an individual budget for each customer account. We do this by first creating the indoor water budget, which is calculated at 55 gallons a person per day living in the household. And so that equals out to, about 748 gallons per unit. Next slide, please. So next would be the outdoor budget, which is a little more complicated. We use this by having the irrigated area on the property, which is the square footage. And what we do is we use the tax assessor information, and we also overlay GIS photograph mapping, and they can have anything that is irrigated, a pool, living plants, anything like that, just nothing that includes the house or any cement or sidewalk features. And then with that, we also use the ET factor, and then we use the plant factor. And then if we need to, we also have a drought factor, which we did use during the last drought to shrink the outdoor budget to make it smaller so customers had to conserve before going into the higher tiers. Slide 7, please. So we can also add water budget adjustments to our accounts if we need to. We have two different types, so we can do it on the indoor side or we can do it on the outdoor budget. So we have variance and adjustments, which can be a one-time adjustment. Let's say you have a pool that has been repaired and you need to repair it. We will give you a one-time pool fill adjustment. We also do adjustments for customers that have medical needs. So if they provide a letter from their doctor, then we will actually give them 50 more gallons a day for the person that has the medical need. Outdoor budgets, we can also offer budgets for horses and livestock. So we do have a large community that does have horses. Some have chickens. I have had people in the drought try to convince me that fish and cats were livestock, but that does not qualify. And if somebody has a flock of chickens, we don't give them, 30 gallons a day per chicken. We do it for the whole group of chickens. So it's kind of on an individual basis, but we do offer that variance for our customers. We also give adjustments for licensed care facilities and change in landscape areas. So if you change your landscape and you do have to establish the routes, we do offer a 2-month landscape variance where we will increase your budget for you to get that established. Next slide, please. So this is just an example I wanted to show of what the water budget looks like on our bill for the customer. And what we did during the drought was we found a lot of people weren't able to find their budget. So we highlighted it in red so they'd easily be able to see it the minute they open their bill. And this shows them how many residents they have, the irrigated area that they're getting credit for, and then the ETO for that month period. Then below, they'll see their budget that they receive for the efficient indoor, the efficient outdoor, and then their total water budget. We also put on there their estimated water budget for the next month. And what we do is we use a 3-year rolling average of the same month the previous three years. So that way we can, let them know that this is an estimate. It could change based on weather patterns, but this is likely what you will be using. And so what that does for us is that lets the customer be able to see every month how many residents they have their irrigated area, and it helps to cut down on inaccurate billings. They can contact us and say, hey, I had a child move out, they don't live here any longer, or I've had someone move in, and we can easily update that budget. One thing that we did do is when we went into the drought, when we started our flow restriction program, which was, a way for us to conserve, we went out and did a lot of inspections, especially when we started the program, because we wanted to make sure that the irrigated area was correct before we start flow restricting people that we felt were using too much water. And surprisingly, the way we do it with the tax assessor and the GIS mapping worked quite well. We had very few that weren't accurate. I was really surprised at how many we had that were accurate and the information was correct. So I do feel comfortable. We also do use boots on the ground for people to go out and check the area as well. The customer doesn't feel comfortable with just the GIS or the tax assessor. So we use a combination of things to do this. We did roll this out around 2015, and neither Craig or I were present at that time, but I can confidently say I think it works very well. I'm sure Craig is going to speak to this, but it worked very well for us, especially when we did the flow restriction program for the drought, to be able to easily identify once we came online with AMI, and we also used Water Smart for our customers. It was the whole suite of it was very informational for us. We could get information quickly. We knew who our largest water users were, and being that we are a district that we don't have any outside water sources, we're 100% reliant on the state water project. That was really important to us to be able to isolate those largest users and get them in compliance quickly. So with that being said, I've concluded my portion and I will turn it back over to Craig.
Thank you, Ursula. Next slide, please, Kim. Actually, before you go on, just want to touch on those are our 4 tiers of efficient, inefficient, and excessive. And actually the excessive goes up to 200% of the budget. So next slide, please. So as Ursula just mentioned, yeah, so let's talk about why they work for Las Virgenes. And again, for those of you joining us today, I mean, for those of you that aren't, immersed in budget-based rates, this can, definitely be a source of heartburn. And I get it. I just want to say that I came, the first part of my career, well, I was a traditional tiered rate. So when you look at this from the looking from the outside in, it just seems a little daunting. But again, we just want to share our story so that you can have some perspective. Again, stressing that component that we are literally having to really account for every drop that comes in. Our customer demographic is a big factor. As Ursula mentioned, we implemented a flow restrictor program, not because we had nothing better to do, or we want to, we're stick before the carrot folks, but we literally, I mean, as it mentions there, affordability is not a driver. We do have customers that probably have never seen a water bill in their life. So it was a form of engagement for us. So it gives us an opportunity. Having that budget structure, as Ursula mentioned, became critical. And in this last drought, and all of us, we thank God we survived it. The district, we were probably one of the most severely cut back in the Met service areas. I mean, I think we had a conservation call of about 74%. So it was game on for us. So having the budgets in place, as Ursula mentioned, so easy. Again, with AMI, to be able to identify those wasteful water users with confidence. And also, I'll just say that, from a conservation perspective, your data analysis, obviously with the deployment of AMI, you can really look at your strategy in terms of who you're reaching out to. Are they the most wasteful? Are they the, again, for those of you guys that do controller programs, you might look at the folks that are the most wasteful, but when you have all this data, you can actually see you're getting the most savings out of the folks that are right at the inefficient tier, as an example. So really, we were really thankful to have budget-based rates. And to provide a little more context, about 89% of our meter inventory classification in the district is residential. So it just is a further driver of a necessity for us to give that clarity. As has been mentioned already, the equity, right? You have those classic customers that state, I see how this works. I'm saving 30%, so my neighbor, can just use any amounts of water that they want. And that's not the case. As this little graph here that hopefully you can see kind of shows at a GPCD level, just over the last 3 years, you can see us dropping from residential GPCD of 195 to 131. So the consummate whole of what we've implemented, budget-based rates being the foundation, has been a huge factor in achieving those goals. Next slide, please. Again, challenges, like really our challenges are similar to the folks with us today on the webinar. It's naturally and administratively challenging, like anything though. And I think the mindset, just like with AMI, is that you do it, you build it, and then everything just falls into place. So it is an ongoing, it's ongoing administratively, but even during the drought, we had a ton of customers that would, call in and amend. And as Ursula and others have mentioned, not only did we find them to be accurate, if anything, if they do call for it, we're usually having the conversation of, well, we actually have you as having more of a budget. You sure you want us to make the change? So it's not as restrictive as it might seem. And as has already been mentioned, we do run into that aggregate budget for multiple meters. And because we have such a robust GIS system and overlay, we have customers, large customers that want to say, well, I have 14 meters and I don't use this. Can I just combine them? And so we do not do that. Again, I mentioned the flow restrictor program really as an offset of the challenges and the landscape transformation programs with our customer. We have WaterSmart as our customer facing portal. And you can see we've just with WaterSmart implemented this look, this tile widget on the customer dashboard that gives them both where they are and then they're estimated. So that's something that, because we do that estimated for each at the account level, that's allowed WaterSmart to be able to bring that in. So I kind of I bring up the challenges, but I say the challenges can be overcome with the aggregate whole of some of these key tools that we've been able to utilize. Next slide. And again, water budgets equate to water efficiency success naturally. Again, just to highlight, we have seen almost 6,000 acre feet and reduced potable consumption. You can see going back to 2013, those numbers. So the success is in the numbers, and we are, again, it gives I feel the district as well as the customers a boundary to function in. And we really feel like budgets have really helped us to be able to actively and strategically and surgically, do things that we need to do to continue to push water efficiency. Next slide, please. And finally, please feel free to visit our website. I just bring attention. Our communications team developed a very comprehensive video that goes through, what water budgets are, because let's be honest, it's not simple. None of this is, no matter how you slice it. So I encourage you to go check that out. It's a great video that we compiled to be able to make that available to customers so that, for folks moving into the district or folks that are trying to, for the first time, looking at their bill to understand it. And next slide. With that, that's all we have. That feel free to reach out to myself or Ursula. Honestly, we're here to help. We don't necessarily have all the answers, but we're happy to help where we can. Thank you so much. I'll turn it back to Kim.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Craig and Ursula. Really appreciate it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we can go to questions from the audience. We've gotten some great ones, so continue to put them in the chat and we will be able to get to everybody's questions today. So I'm just going to start from the beginning, and the very first one I saw was a great question. I think probably a lot of you have the same one. And it's a challenging one, I think, for anyone who's done budget-based rates. So the question is, how do you tackle properties like a park that have multiple meters, but no clear boundaries for each meter? And I know, Jenna, you said site visits were one of the ways that you guys handle it. I don't know if you want to elaborate a little bit more on that. And then anybody else on the panel, please feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I didn't want to jump ahead to, everybody. I knew it would be everybody's presentation. That's why I put that very simple answer. But as you probably all heard, it's not so simple. Each agency kind of has their own take on how to do it. As Dan mentioned, we sent the map and then had people send it back, and then I'll let CVWD answer about their tactic.
This is Lisa. I'll jump in here. Yeah, boots on the ground. We send someone out and we coordinate a visit and ask that a landscape person familiar with the entire site be there and present to turn things on and off, to help us out, show us where things are. And when they know that it's about making sure that their budget is right and that their bill is right, they're usually pretty willing to accommodate.
Craig or Ursula, do you have anything you want to share
I was
on
just
that?
gonna say we have both the boots on the ground and just the, the GIS overlay. So I don't think we have examples where we just don't have boundaries. I think that's, if we don't have them, we've got to obtain them or create them. So that's something that we are able to really utilize well, is GIS, a very robust GIS department.
And for your boots on the ground, is this, what staff do you utilize, or do you have interns, or do you use outside resources to help with that?
I'll jump in here for this, Kim. We do contract with somebody who does this professionally when it's a large number of meters. When it's a small number of meters, our internal staffing is more than capable of handling those kinds of boots on the ground investigations. But large scale things, we go to the outside for that.
Yeah, as in a follow-up, is that your conservation staff or meter readers? Yeah, okay.
It's our conservation staff. Now, certainly we can employ the help of meter readers if it's a place that's not going to be easiest for our conservation staff to get to, and meter readers will be out there anyway. We're happy to call in a favor, but typically this would be our conservation staff.
So this is Ursula, and what we do is our started out with field staff, and then during the drought, it did get a little bit larger with the request, so we contracted out with an outside service, and then now it is field service, as well as we have Metropolitan Water District that does offer water surveys, and they'll provide to us what the information they find when they go out and help customers. So it's a mixture.
Great, thanks. Next question is about plant factors. And I know all of you had some variation of plant factors in your formula. But I'm just wondering, for Eastern and for Coachella Valley and Las Virgenes, like when you're looking at plant factors, for those who are actually looking at plants, not the building, is it like a percentage of hedges, percentage of high or low water using plants? How do you figure that part out?
This is Lisa from Coachella Valley. So we have a plant factor for different, I would call them seasons, but it's basically warm and cool seasons. So for example, January, February, March, November, December are kind of our cooler months, and it's a 0.65 monthly plant factor. April and October are 0.6. And May, June, July, August, September, that's traditionally our hottest times of the year, is 0.55.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, for EMWD, I think the strategy behind having the conservation factor rather than looking at the plants specifically like you would from Woogles, what's the water use factor for a given plant or tree. The thinking, I think, at Eastern was starting out with the oldest housing stock, before 2006 and so forth, a lot of new communities, that they would be less efficient and they would have more turf, which is in fact true. And so there was a higher conservation factor given for that group within those construction age ranges. And then gradually, as legislation and obviously drought and other pressures are on us, we have been reducing that conservation factor. So all new homes and all new construction for commercial is at a 0.5. So it's basically just 50% of whatever the evapotranspiration rate is.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and for Las Virgenes, kind of similar to that of Dan. I think we started out with a 1.0 and have kind of ratcheted down to, again, the assumption is, right, as Dan mentioned, that they were less drought resilient, so a 0.8, and I think for new development now we use a 0.55. And I think again the thought is that that's the beauty, and one of the beauties in this budget process, right, especially with impending regulations, is you have that flexibility.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for answering that. For the next question, we had, how long does a typical budget review process take?
This is Lisa with Coachella Valley again. That just really depends on the number of meters involved, how large the property is. Typically, if it's 10 meters, it's not going to take more than a day to do the actual boots on the ground part. The longest part of it is analysis, and once we have the information from the site visit, okay, what does this mean? Are these meters looped? Are they not? What exactly do they serve? Did we have the landscape area wrong to begin with? What needs to change? So that's probably the lengthiest part of it. At CVWD, we have a staff of 3 people that work specifically on budgets and budget accuracy, but we do have our entire staff of 14 capable of jumping in when needed. And I don't know if that answered the question. I guess getting back to how long does it take? Well, it really does depend on the number of meters, but it could take anywhere from a couple of days to a couple of weeks. If we're having to work with outside departments, which we often do, it can take longer.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
This is Ursula. And so ours is pretty much the same as it can be done immediately if someone calls up to change a resident count. We haven't filled a budget request form, we can do it that day. It'll be reflected on the next bill. If we're just going out to do a survey, it could take just a couple days for us to have them scheduled to come out there. Or we need them to send documentation, or it depends on how busy our GIS staff is, whether it's same day or a couple days. So normally for us, it doesn't take into the next billing cycle. We'll have an answer before we bill the next cycle for them. But yeah, it can vary.
And this is Dan. At EMWD, typical variances for a number of people and medical variances and so forth are handled very quickly. Typically, folks will either fax or email us a form with that information, and doctors note if necessary. So that can be done just by one staff member who's in charge of that, within a few minutes. Also, I wanted to mention, we have an aerial mapping service called NearMap, which some of you may have. And so about every 6 months, we get updated color aerial photography, which is very high resolution. And so at the same time, the person, our customer representatives on the phone, they can be looking at the site for the landscape, see what's changed. And it's, 6 months is pretty current. On the other end of the reviews, we actually have sites, large HOAs and some commercial sites where it's been going on for years, that they've challenged the measurement. We've had commercial contractors go out. It can get very messy, especially with large sites with a large water bill and multiple meters. So most of them are just fairly easy administrative, but there are always those few. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. This is a great question. What % of your customers are at or below their water budget? I know a few of you had put in some answers in the chat, but if you can just elaborate on that, that would be great.
Yeah, so this is Adam from CVWD. So generally, I think we see, like, on any given month, about 70% of customers stay within their budget. And then CADC actually helped us look into trying to figure out how many stay within budget for an entire year. So never hit that tier 3. And for us, that was just over 50% that never hit those higher tiers. So
Thanks for the plug.
And and I can speak for Las Virgenes. I mean, so with Water Smart, I mean, we can see it by meter class. So we're looking at, like, for single family, we've been at 89% accounts within budget. And our irrigation only, or non-potable or recycled water within 94%. So again, kind of all obviously reflected by wetter, when you're in the winter season, the less demand months, we typically see that. Although I will say we probably broke some records in 2022 during the emergency restrictions. I think we've seen as much as 91%, which honestly, when I look at those numbers, I think something's wrong. But we, again, having Water Smart and that telemetry, again, we can only see, the month prior, right? We're not seeing everything at this level in real time, but nonetheless, it is a great reporting tool.
And I think for us, BMWD has a flow restriction program that we had to implement because penalties just were not working for us to get customers to conserve. So I think that's also for us a big tool that we have in our toolbox that helps drive those conservation numbers.
And at Eastern, very similar to others, depending on the time of year, will depend on the fluctuation, but typically from the low 80% to high 80% is what we see for our residential customers. I don't recall for our non-residential, but it's the majority are within budget.
Awesome, thanks. And then there was a question about water rate studies and if you guys do that in-house. I'll just throw that question to everybody.
I'll say for Las Virgenes, I mean, naturally it's a staff-led effort, but we typically will use a consultant depending on if there's a cost of service analysis or pieces like that. So combo.
Same for Eastern.
Same for you, Jenna, is that what you said?
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can just add for CVWD, we also consult out those cost of service studies. So I think we're in the middle of our most recent Prop 218, so we'll probably be going through another one in a couple more years.
Awesome. So there was another question, and I think a lot of you touched on this in your actual tiers, but if you want to elaborate a little bit more, and just affordability in your rates in your tiers. Does anybody want to talk about how you've addressed that or are looking to address that in the future?
This is Dan. There has been some studies of affordability. I think we've worked with UC Riverside and other consultants to look at that, relative to sort of regional water agencies and state water agencies. And it's turned out to be, in terms of a percentage of income for various income levels, it's turned out that our rates are extremely affordable relative to the water world in general. And so I think part of the reason is our water rate structure is the tiers are based on the cost of delivering that water from each of our water sources. So for example, the lowest cost water for us would be our local sources, and then going to imported and all the way up to desal. The increase in the cost for each tier is based on that actual cost of delivering that water, delivering that service. And most people in our district simply don't overuse water that much. So they're not generally going into the higher tiers anyway. And so affordability turns out to be quite good in our district.
Yeah, and I can just add for CVWD, I'm not aware of a affordability study that we've performed per se, but I do know the board generally is adverse to any rate increases, and we do have, what I think are some of the lowest rates. So in that tier 1, that indoor residential, that tier 1 charge is 99 cents per unit per CCF. So we do have a fixed monthly charge. For a single family, it's about $13 a month. But so those 8 units and the fixed charge, your bill can be $20 a month. So without any outdoor use. But so yeah, that's where we're at, and I know that why we provide that tier 1 at that low cost.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, and we are also about to embark on, new rates. Naturally, this is the elephant in the room, right? In conservation. Thank you for saving all that water. Now your bill's going to go up, and oh, by the way, keep saving water. When we've just done some look at residential water rates, kind of comparing our with neighboring communities, looking at average monthly bills and under equal consumption consideration, we're about we're at about $134 for an average monthly bill. And to give just a comparator, Santa Barbara, who I don't know if anybody on the call, but Santa Barbara they have a higher rate structure, so it'd be equivalent to like $365. Again, there's a lot of so I guess to answer this question though, it's been in our mission statement, obviously, to provide the greatest services, right, and keep prices affordable. But with Met's prices going up, naturally that the conversation changes. And so, but we're always looking at, again, comparatively, how we size up, and that's just on the potable side. So
Yeah, and expanding on that, there was a question about the percent of fixed charges versus variable charges. I don't know if you have those figures handy, but if anybody wants to tackle that one.
This is Lisa in Coachella Valley. So we do have fixed rates based on meter size and what the classification of the meter is. So single family, for example, or multifamily, commercial, landscape irrigation, and again on meter size. And we go from the traditional 3/4 up to 2-inch and occasionally 3 or 4-inch.
Great, thank you.
This is Ursula from Las Virgenes. And we have the same. We have fixed charges for the readiness to serve charge, and then we have our sewer charges are fixed based on the resident count that you have. So we have both fixed and the budget based rates.
This is Dan. I would have to go back to our most recent rate study, engineering quality rate study, which is about 2 years ago, to answer that question. But I do know from looking at rate studies kind of across the state, there has been a trend basically for revenue stability to increase the percentage of fixed rates relative to the average bill, and kind of gets away, so we cover our fixed costs here at the district, which is the majority of it, and the variable costs used in the water budgets are used more for the signaling of if there's a drought, or just every day to keep them within budget, so that we don't have to be raising our rates unnecessarily.
Right. Thanks. For the folks that have AMI, can you tell us what software platforms you're using, both for the meters and for your customer or your portals?
yeah, for Las Virgenes, we deployed Neptune. So the MDM, or the meter data management system, is platform is Neptune 360. So that's the back end. And we use WaterSmart for the customer facing.
And our billing system is Harris Advanced CIS.
As I put in the chat, we have census meters, so we use Aquametrics, but our customer portal is through a program called Silverblaze. And then we use Kayenta for billing system.
And here's an interesting one too. How did you get people per household? Was that through census data or a form customers had to fill out, or a combination?
This is Ursula from Las Virgenes. And we sent out, Craig and I weren't there at the time, but I do have all the forms still. So in 2015, they sent out a budget questionnaire to every customer to fill out and return. And that was how they got the initial counts when they switched over to the budget billing, what we do now is when a customer calls to sign up for service, we ask them how many they have at that time, or if they filled the application online, they would put it there.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, for EMWD, for single family, for example, I think I mentioned before, is basically a default of 3 people per household. And then the process is, it's incumbent upon the customer to contact us for a variance if they have more people than that or less. And then, yeah, and so that's been the overall process. Then for non-single family residential, we've gone through a variety of different exercises to try to determine that, especially like with schools, you know, manufacturing facilities, etc. It's really, really difficult to get that information, and our confidence, you know, in the accuracy is, well, I don't know how to calculate it. Let's put it that way. Thanks.
I think you addressed the one from Chris already. So the last question I see is, how about CIP increase cost? Did anyone put it in the prop text? I'm guessing it's part of just the rates.
Yeah, I can say for CVWD, I know the board evaluates the like 5-year CIP plan, and engineering and finance work together to try to determine how that CIP plan is going to impact rates going forward, so they get feedback on maybe if they want it, if any CIP should get delayed or projects extended over 6 years instead of 5 years. But that's all considered as part of deciding rate changes each year.
Yeah, I mean, Las Virgenes is the same. We would build them into our rate structure.
Okay, awesome, thanks. Those are all the questions I see in the chat. I just have one question, and how many dedicated staff do you have that work on water budgets?
At Coachella Valley, we have 3 dedicated to that particular area, but there are 14 on our conservation staff, and any or all of them are able and trained in how to handle budget-based rates related matters.
Awesome.
This is Ursula from Las Virgenes. So we have, we don't have really anyone that's dedicated to budgets, but we do have 5 at the front office that do billing, and they do talk to customers and they help them when they call in with budget questions or updating their budget. We have several customer or field service reps that go out and can help do site visits if needed. We did just create a new position called a customer service program supervisor, who is also over Backland Cross Connection, but one of his main jobs is, now that we are live with AMI WaterSmart, there is so much data coming in, and his job is to create, run, filter through the reports so we can identify each month the highest users, the largest leaks, leaks that aren't repaired, and reach out to them every month to get those corrected and to help customers conserve. So we did actually create a position, not basically just for the budgets, but for the data that comes in from the AMI and the WaterSmart people that go over their budgets.
And so I'd say at Eastern, within the conservation work group, we have 4 dedicated people that work on this, but you know, across Eastern, we have someone in GIS who helps us. We have someone in billing, and then an IT person that help us, you know, as needed. And we are looking to hire a management analyst within our department to help out with some of these initiatives.
Awesome, thank you. And I said we have one last question that came in. Aside from using sewer demand, how have you handled CII budget development?
I think if the question is regarding kind of the new, with regard to the new regulations, I think that's something we have our work in front of us. We're, as Las Virgenes, we don't have a large CII. meter class, but nonetheless, that is something that, we'll be working on. I don't know if Ursula, if you have anything to add to that.
You answered that perfectly.
At EMWD, we have, I mentioned some of the things in our presentation, but CII is a whole different set of animals all by itself. We have a pretty wide range of different kind of CII properties here. Horse ranches, private horse ranches, all the way down to strip malls and everything in between. And it's a big challenge, how to get that information. We've worked with consultants who have done tried to do some GIS tagging of sites to tell us what types of businesses they are. That's an ever-changing situation there, where it may be a dry cleaner today and tomorrow it's a coffee shop, that kind of thing, as that gets into the maintenance. It's really just too complicated for me to sum anything up on there. It's really just like a one-off, even with large landscape sites, depending on if you've got a champion there in the landscape company or in the company that you're working with. That's the best case. Worst case is that you just can't get a hold of anybody to respond to your calls or your letters. So it's really a wide open field there in terms of how to handle.
Yeah, and this is Adam, just real quick from CVWD. So, and I had mentioned that we use sewer demand right for creating those indoor component of the budget for CII. And I just wanted to add, we also have variances, or I guess it will incorporate for processed water for facilities that use water in the production of some good. So there's processed water to consider as well. So I don't know if there's anything else, Lisa.
Great, thank you so much. Well, that concludes our presentation for today. I have a couple of announcements, but I just want to thank you so much for taking time, getting through the technical difficulties earlier. I learned a lot, as I always do, from folks like you. So I really appreciate you sharing what you've learned with everyone that's here today, and for those folks that will see it in the future on our YouTube channel. So I'm just going to share my screen real quick. Just want to let everyone know we have our 9th California Water Data Summit. It's going to be held August 15th and 16th at the University of San Diego. We have a call for abstract that's open right now. It's going to be closing next week. So please, if you have an interesting topic like today, or someone that might be a great speaker, please let us know. We would love to get as many, wonderful sessions out there as we possibly can. I also wanted to let you guys know that we just launched our online CADC community. So this is really a hub where we want to have a whole series of free resources for non-members, and then we have some gated content for our members only. On this online community, you'll be able to see things like the webinar from today. You'll be able to get the PowerPoint, any kind of resources that we get from these types of webinars, like the video that Craig showed on, telling customers how these budgets are developed. Those are the types of resources that we'll include in this online community, as well as open source data that we've created that we want to share with folks, or that we know about on GitHub, things like that. So take a look. You can get to that online community through that link. And we also have something we've been working on for over a year now. We got a USBR grant to create and update our existing software system. So for those of you that don't know, CADC has 2 different types of software systems, one to help you unlock your AMI, but the other one is really taking your consumption data from your billing system and putting it into different dashboards so you can look at it. So like we were talking about today, like, with WaterSmart, being able to look at, who's in budget, who's not in budget, and then really create a plan to help those customers get into their budget. Similarly, we do that through this. And the cool thing is, because we got a USBR grant, we are offering a free version of this software. It doesn't have all of the features, but it's got some amazing features. So we're launching that at the end of next month. Look for some demos. If you're a California urban water supplier and you want to, check it out, look for some newsletters coming out from our office in the near future about how to sign up for a demo. With that, that's it for me. You can reach out to me anytime. That's my email. You can check out information about what we have going on at our website. And I just, again, want to thank everyone for showing up today. Really appreciate you sticking it out with us. And we will be providing all of this online on our YouTube channel. So look for that in the next couple of days. Thank you all so much. Does anybody have any thoughts they want to leave us with? I know you've provided so much already.
I'll just add, as I said in the chat, thank you for this opportunity, but, if anyone has questions, please reach out to us, reach out to Kim or Chris. All of us are very willing to answer questions and help as we can. You don't have to do this alone and learn the mistakes that we learned along the way. Please reach out.
Yeah, and I'll echo Jenna. I've managed 2 AMI projects, and I know that, I know a lot of people get stuck there. It's a huge lift. So I don't have all the answers, but if I can be of any service, happy to, share, as Jenna mentioned, just, lessons learned and things to consider.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful afternoon, and please look for future events coming from the CADC and our partners. See you soon.